Welcome to a world where pyramids cast long shadows over bustling streets filled with merchants, scholars, and soldiers, where ancient Egyptian traditions collided with the might of the Roman Empire. In today's video, we're traveling back nearly 2,000 years to explore what life was really like in Roman-era Egypt, before Christianity reshaped the region. From temple rituals to imperial tax collectors, from village gossip to international trade routes, this is a story of cultural collision, adaptation, and survival. Imagine the sun rising over the Nile near the bustling city of Alexandria. A local farmer, Mines, begins his day as he always does, checking the irrigation canals to ensure his grain fields are receiving enough water. His wife, Iset, grinds barley while their children fetch water and prepare to accompany her to the local market. Despite Roman rule, much of their village life is still governed by age-old Egyptian traditions. Offerings are still made to Isis, and many still write in Demotic script. In the city, life looks quite different. Roman administrators and Greek-speaking elites walk in togas, their business conducted in Latin or Greek, not Egyptian. A scribe might be transcribing Roman tax records, while a priest nearby prepares an offering in a hybridized temple where Roman marble columns surround statues of Horus. In the schools, Greek philosophy is taught alongside Egyptian mythology, and elite children learn Homer and Herodotus, while still being told the stories of Osiris. Later that evening, the streets of Alexandria come alive with a blend of cultural noise. Egyptian musicians playing reed flutes, Roman soldiers bickering over dice games, and Alexandrian Jews debating scripture in the synagogue. It's a world where identities overlap, loyalties blur, and daily life is defined by an uneasy, but enduring, balance between the old and the new. How Egypt became Roman. Egypt became part of the Roman Empire in 30 BCE, after the dramatic fall of Queen Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony, defeated by Octavian at the Battle of Actium. Cleopatra's suicide and the annexation of Egypt marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, but unlike other conquered provinces, Egypt wasn't handed over to the Roman Senate. It was considered the personal property of the emperor. Augustus installed a prefect, not a senatorial governor, to rule the land, underscoring Egypt's importance to imperial stability. The reason was strategic. Egypt was Rome's breadbasket, supplying vast quantities of grain that fed the capital. Control over Egypt also meant control over key trade routes to Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and India. By keeping it under his direct rule, Augustus prevented rival senators from exploiting its wealth to fund rebellions. This tight imperial grip made Egypt both powerful and isolated, governed more like a royal estate than a typical Roman province. What did the Egyptians think? For many Egyptians, Roman rule was just another chapter in a long history of foreign domination. They had already been ruled by Persians and Greeks before the Romans arrived, and many rural Egyptians continued living in much the same way, tending their fields and practicing their ancestral religion. Still, the transition brought more bureaucracy and a harsher tax system. Latin-speaking officials replaced many Greek-speaking administrators, and locals often found themselves at a disadvantage when dealing with imperial authorities. Among the elite classes, reactions were more mixed. Greek-speaking Alexandrians, who had enjoyed a privileged position under the Ptolemies, were wary of their declining influence under Roman oversight. While some elite Egyptians sought to curry favor by adopting Roman dress or Latin names, many still clung to their Hellenistic heritage and maintained ties to local temple networks. Tensions flared occasionally, including violent uprisings in Upper Egypt in response to tax demands or cultural suppression. Despite the social unrest, the Romans knew better than to try to erase Egyptian identity outright. They allowed temples to remain open, festivals to continue, and priests to carry on their rituals, so long as they didn't interfere with Roman interests. Over time, local populations adjusted, learning to navigate a complex world of imperial law, economic pressure, and cultural negotiation. Egypt's role in the Roman Empire. Under Rome, Egypt's primary role was economic. The Nile's rich floodplains produced vast amounts of grain, which were shipped to feed the ever-hungry population of Rome. Alexandria became a central hub for storing, inspecting, and exporting this grain, guarded carefully by Roman soldiers and monitored by imperial agents. Disruptions in Egypt's grain output could threaten political stability in the capital, making the province both vital and volatile. But Egypt wasn't just a granary. It was a vibrant economic and intellectual crossroads. Trade caravans brought incense, ivory, and exotic animals from Africa. Roman merchants imported glassware, wine, and olive oil. Scholars in Alexandria studied everything from astronomy to alchemy in the famed library and its successor institutions. Egypt also became a crucial node in the Red Sea trade network, linking the empire with India and Arabia through ports like Berenice. As much as Rome shaped Egypt, Egypt also shaped Rome through its resources, innovations, and cultural exports. When did Egyptians really become Roman? Roman identity was complicated in Egypt. Technically, most native Egyptians were not considered Roman citizens until the Constitutio Antoniniana of 212 CE, when Emperor Caracalla granted citizenship to nearly all free inhabitants of the empire. Before that, Roman citizenship was reserved for soldiers, elites, and the wealthy. The rest of the population was subject to heavier taxes and had fewer legal protections. Even after gaining legal citizenship, most Egyptians didn't suddenly become culturally Roman. They continued to speak Egyptian or Greek, worship their traditional gods, and follow local customs. Roman names and fashion were sometimes adopted for status, but Egyptian life remained distinct from the imperial heartland. Roman identity in Egypt was more administrative than cultural, a system people had to work within, not necessarily believe in. Interestingly, Romanization was uneven. Soldiers stationed in Egypt often married local women and formed hybrid families. Children might be given Roman names, but raised in Egyptian traditions. Over generations, these blended households created a new provincial culture, neither fully Egyptian nor fully Roman, but something uniquely Egyptian-Roman. Religion and cultural blending. Religion in Roman Egypt was a mosaic of continuity and innovation. The Romans didn't outlaw native Egyptian beliefs. Instead, they adapted them. Deities like Isis gained popularity far beyond Egypt, with temples built in Italy, Gaul, and even the British Isles. Isis, Osiris, and Horus were reinterpreted through Greco-Roman lenses, and new composite gods like Serapis were invented to bridge the gap between traditions. These figures made Egyptian religion more accessible to the broader empire, even as they subtly transformed its core meanings. Inside Egypt, temples remained central to community life, especially in rural areas. Priests not only led rituals, but also administered local economies, distributed grain, and maintained records. However, Rome began reducing temple funding over time, especially after Augustus centralized control. As state patronage declined, temples lost influence, and some shrank into localized shrines dependent on private donations rather than imperial support. Still, religious fusion had lasting effects. Roman emperors were sometimes depicted as pharaohs in Egyptian art, and temples combined classical architectural elements with native iconography. For centuries, Egypt's sacred traditions endured under this arrangement, only gradually diminishing with the spread of Christianity in the late Roman and Byzantine periods. From Roman to Byzantine rule. In 395 CE, after the death of Emperor Theodosius I, the Roman Empire officially split into Eastern and Western halves. Egypt fell under the Eastern Roman, or Byzantine, Empire, ruled from Constantinople. Though still Roman in law and language, the Byzantines brought a new cultural flavor, heavily influenced by Christianity and Greek Orthodoxy. This marked the beginning of a slow transformation, as pagan temples were closed and Christian institutions rose in their place. The old temples, some active for over 3,000 years, were gradually shut down by imperial decree. The last hieroglyphic inscription we know of was written in 394 CE at Philae, marking the end of written ancient Egyptian religion. Meanwhile, a new religious tradition was rising, Coptic Christianity. It combined Christian theology with Egyptian language and symbolism, providing continuity for many Egyptians as they transitioned into a new faith under Byzantine rule. Egypt remained a prized and contested region until the Muslim conquest in the 7th century reshaped it once again. Roman Egypt wasn't a monolith. It was a crossroads of empire and resistance, of religion and reform, of cultures woven together across centuries. The people who lived there didn't simply become Roman. They reshaped Rome in their image, even as they adapted to survive. From the humblest farmer to the priests of Isis, life in Roman Egypt tells a deeper story, one of resilience, complexity, and the timeless dance between power and tradition.